Hey guys, this is Jon Bokenkamp, the creator of The Blacklist. You are listening to The Blacklist Exposed on Golden Spiral Media.
Welcome to a very special edition of the award-winning The Blacklist Exposed podcast. Greetings, one and all. I'm Agent Troy Heinrichs.
And I'm Agent Aaron Peterson, and thanks for joining us yet again for The Blacklist Exposed. As we say, Svidaniya, to someone very important, not only to The Blacklist itself, but to our podcast as well, Mr. Jon Bokenkamp. Show notes and other intel for this episode of The Blacklist Exposed can be found at theblacklistexposed.com. And as we go through this episode, we are going to be going back to the well to break out clips from Jon himself and his interviews throughout the years. So everyone who says they must have pulled this or that out of their ass or retcon this or to fit that, ruh-roh, you might be in for a little bit of a surprise.
Yeah, Jon was very gracious in this time, being able to connect with all of us, the fans, especially through this podcast. And this is our kind of love letter to say thanks for everything that he's given us, given the show, given the fans, over 8 great, amazing years, because he has left the building, as Elvis would have said.
Yes, and we'll be talking more about that as we go, but it's also important to note that we're also showing you that he's been showing the clues for a while, and he's been talking about them too, whether we want to accept it or not, as some people may or may not choose to. The clues are out there. That they are. But okay.
This has been the time of year where we'd never been able to do a podcast. And so we're doing a podcast in the month of July. And in the month of July is when the podcast awards actually happen. So maybe this episode's a little self-serving to say goodbye to Jon, but also self-serving for the podcast awards. I don't know. But you go to podcastawards.com. And when you're on that website, you, the fans, get to choose who is nominated for this year's podcast awards. We've done this every year since we've been around, and we really appreciate everybody that goes out there and does that. So again, podcastawards.com, fill out a little form to sign up with your email address, vote for us in the entertainment category, and then you can also vote for Aaron's other podcast, The Hollywood Outsider, in the TV and film category. So Blacklist and entertainment, Hollywood Outsider in TV and film, and then vote for The Blacklist also in the People's Choice overall category at the top of the page.
Yes, and also shout out to Wayne Henderson, friend of the show, for Packers Fan Podcast and Sports. So yeah, podcastawards.com. All you got to do is go there, like Troy said. It's very simple. You'll have to create a generic password just to submit your vote. And then you'll probably get a verification email. So be sure to check your email for that. That's normal. That's to make sure you're not a bot, because they don't want people gaming the system, because the finalists are determined solely by listeners. So people that are voting for the shows they love get to decide that. And we'll make a deal with you. Whoever you like more. If you like Troy more, he can have the trophy. If you like me more, I'll take the trophy. We'll put it up. If we make the finals, we'll put it up in the group. And then if we win, we'll figure that out. We'll let you guys decide, because I'm a big fan of separating this already divided fan base. Let's just keep it as divided as we possibly can.
I love it. That's awesome.
Okay, so let's get into the actual episode where we're going to say goodbye to one of our favorite people. Before we get to that was a little bit of a tease to what we came to discuss. We're going to talk a little bit about the reactions to the season 8 finale, which people are still talking about, in air quotes. I think they're or brawling. I don't know how you want to word it, Troy.
Bawling?
Bawling's an option too. There's a lot of different responses to this. And there's vitriol, there's love, there's joy, there's vitriol, there's brawling, there's all kinds of stuff. And now that you've had time to process, do you feel any differently about the finale and Liz's exit episode at all?
I think I'm coming around to the idea that maybe you were right, that the letter.
Whoa. Hold, please.
Yeah, that was about 5 minutes into the final episode of season 8 for those keeping track.
4:47 on my count, but I don't know when it's all edited. It might be a different time.
That's right, because I'll just take this out completely. But
That's possible.
Aaron was right in the fact that, the letter setup was kind of weird. Like, as I go back and watch it, I'm like, that's kind of we had to write something in order to make something else happen. And I can see how people would be kind of like, I didn't like that so much. So yes, I don't think it was the most perfect finale in the world, but I still stand by that. The fact that the montage and the concept of handing over the business is still probably the right concept. Just the motivation to make that happen was a little bit off.
I'll take that. Yeah, I mean, I kind of went into my issues with it last week, so I'm not going to rehash those. You can go back and listen to last week's episode. But I will tell you that I have seen the montage more times. I watched it like 15 before the podcast last week, and this time I've seen it more, and I like it more every time. You know, I know a lot of the stuff moving up to that I had some issues with, but the actual finale with Liz going down and Red being crushed and realizing he failed, and that whole reveal, which I consider the Katarina reveal, all of that to me was very powerful stuff.
To be as powerful and moving as it was, to invoke the reactions that the fans have had to it, whether you were pro Red Arena, not pro Red Arena, pro Liz, not pro Liz, I think everybody reacted to the montage the same way until the final scene, and then everybody was like, dude, she's not dead. Come on, she's not dead. It's like, what are you people talking about? There was more blood under Liz's body than there was next to Anne's head. Okay.
Yeah, it was bad.
It was bad.
It's a mortal wound, and it wasn't a setup. And I think there is a moment where like Red looks up almost as if there's a sniper on the roof to finish the job kind of thing. I got that implication, but I don't know if that's true, because if that's true, why didn't you shoot Van Dyke? I don't know, but that's a whole other thing. But yes, to my understanding, it's very clear Liz is dead.
Yes.
There is no coming back. It wasn't a fake death. I know people are hopeful, and I respect that. You know, it's cool to hope. You know, anything can happen. But I would say Megan Boone has left the show. So short of giving plastic surgery to someone, there's no way Liz comes back.
What? That's not possible in the show? I mean, we could totally make her into somebody else and then have a completely new actress playing the role of Elizabeth Keene.
You could, but man, after 8 years, that just feels, Now you're forcing it. You know what I mean? Like, let it play. You already made the call. You got to live with the call, no matter how you feel about it. I don't really have as much of a problem with that portion of it as, like I said, the setups section. So I think there's really only two ways it could have went. She dies, or she goes off into hiding, or runs the business, I guess.
Yeah, and I don't want to say this like in a negative way by any stretch of the imagination to say that this is a TV trope, but the TV trope is when people die, life flashes before their eyes. And that is exactly what happened in the montage sequence. Her life is flashing before her eyes, and she even literally dies. Like, there's a point where you can see where she's alive, and then she's clearly dead, and the cameras just focus. So you know that she is no longer of this earth, and therefore is not going to be in the show in this form or any other form going forward, not even as a Cyranoid.
Right. I'm kind of mad they even introduced that, because people are throwing that up there. It's like, has it been around for 30 years? Because that's the only way that theory would even hold water. So let's back off that one. And by the way, in case you didn't see it, Megan Boone has announced a development deal with Sony. We're very happy for her. So congratulations on your next endeavors, Megan. I mean, like I've always said, I feel like maybe the writing didn't speak to her at all times, but I really feel like she delivered in that final episode for sure. I've loved her in the show the whole time, but that was really a wonderful death scene, and that's a weird thing to say, but so many times when you see death scene, I just feel like it's overacted, and this felt more natural.
What?
Across the board.
I don't know what you're meaning. Any Buffy fans out there?
God, I love that scene. That's so good. That should be the death scene for everyone.
And what's great is that, Megan had some parts and obviously before the Blacklist, but this was like her big coming to the stage and being Hollywood present in front of everybody. And the fact that Sony took a chance on her to give her the first look deal for the stuff that she's going to do with Wicked Sister, I believe was the name of the production company that she's starting up to feature female writers and female directors and female actors and female story. I think it's great. I just think it's really, really awesome for what she's trying to accomplish. And I think it's going to be fun. And especially with her green initiatives that she talked about that you learn.
It's
Weird
Sisters.
Yes, Weird Sisters. The just the green initiatives that she's been trying to do, when she's not on the show, and how she talked about, I think it was in the 100th episode, about how much waste is in Hollywood. I'm interested to see what kind of green initiative she does with this production company going forward, to see if she can make a change in Hollywood. I think it's a really interesting time for her. So kudos and congratulations. And again, if you haven't seen Underground Railroad on Amazon Prime, go check it out. She's really great in it.
And speaking of Megan Boone and Liz, we did talk about her a lot last week, but this is really Jon's episode. And we're going to get more directly to Jon Bokenkamp himself. And in case you didn't know, it's possible you didn't know, he's the creator of The Blacklist. He is the executive producer of The Blacklist. He's a showrunner. He wrote many, many, many episodes, most of the ones we've talked about with mythology-heavy episodes. And, he is departing the show. He's moving on to other things, and we'll touch on that in a second. But in terms of Liz herself, I just kind of want to go back and let you guys hear. Jon talked about Liz going dark way back in our season 3 interview. As you've done that this season, especially in terms of Liz, because, her character has gone really dark in certain spots. I've debated this several times where I wonder, is the character Liz is she beyond the point of redemption? I know she's searching for it. Everybody's trying to help her achieve that, but is that really even possible? I assume you might not be able to answer that. I understand that because there's a season left.
I mean, look, that's an interesting question. I think that's one of the. I think she is definitely on a dark path. I think she is, and I think she will continue to be. I think that's what. Look, that's what I think a lot of the show is about. Is somebody who has her eyes opened, and look, whether he's her father or not, whatever their connection is, he is somebody who has become important to her, and she is corrupted by. And, it's sort of a battle for, it sounds cheesy, but it's a battle for her soul. It's a battle for, can she survive going through this process of, can she survive? Really, that's it. And so I don't know. I do know, but I'm not going to tell you, but it's going to be fun. I'll tell you that.
And then again in season 7, what's different about this take? Because to me, it seems like this time she's really accepted her darker path. Is that the case this time? I mean, is she really embracing it?
Yeah, 100%. I think, and that's maybe that arc is part of what we didn't get to live with quite as much, is that we would have had we had the other 3 episodes to maybe explore that a little more and make it a little more earned.
Well,
but
3 episodes is a long time to flesh things out. So
it is, yeah, and we have, she's not going to get any lighter. I know that. She and as you guys know, I mean, the warrior gene and stewing people and, getting rid of bodies for wrestler and stuff. We've talked about this for a long time, and you can see as you go back over the life of the series, moments where we sort of tried to embrace it and then let go. She murdered the, attorney general, right? And then sort of came back from it. And this, I think the thing that's different about this one is I don't think she comes back from this. I think this is, that Batman shot where she's looking out over the city and trying to figure out, not trying to figure out, she knows, I'm going to embrace this. And this is a line in the sand that we're not coming back from. That's the promise of season 8 that I'm most excited about, is really letting her lean into that, in a big way.
So that's just a little taste of how much foresight is in the show. There's been some debate about, especially since the finale, like how much this was planned ahead of time, how much they really know or was part of their book, so to speak, in terms of the mythology of the Blacklist and how much was made up. Well, some things were very clearly in play quite some time ago.
Yeah, and I think he went over that on the season 8 interview, which you can go back in the feed and check that out, where he said, he's talking about Townsend and the fact that they knew that there was a big bad who had some power over Red, and that Red was, extremely afraid of, right? That's the signpost that Jon said. They knew that. What they didn't know was that Townsend was this, crazy bad guy with a family who was murdered, who's an insomniac. Like, that's the stuff that they write in after they get to the point, because they don't know how the rest of the season was coming up before that. because, pandemic happened. Megan's announcement of leaving the show happened. Megan's shorter episode count this year happened. There's all kinds of things. Well, Jon left the show at some point and she asked to leave the show. It wasn't like they wrote her out because they didn't like her. So there's things like that where the show changes trajectory as it goes along. There's always the end point they're trying to get to, but sometimes, we live in the Chicago area, right? You're coming down the tri-state. Sometimes you got to go through downtown and sometimes you can skip it, but you're still going to end up in Indiana either way when you're done. So I think that's
I like that analogy, man. Did you write that or did you come up with that on the fly?
No, I actually drove it the other day. That's why I was like,
okay,
do I want to go downtown or do I want to stay in the tri-state? I don't know. So I was just like, but I know I got to get to the Skyway no matter what. And so at the end of the day, I think that's really the key is that, yes, where people would say, oh, they didn't have that plan because they just winged it. Well, no, they didn't wing all of it. They winged pieces to formulate what was the thought, but the thought was always there from the get-go.
And what are you most intrigued by in regards to fan reactions to that finale? Because I'll tell you what mine is. It's that all the people that trash Liz, and I'm seeing the same names pop up, so it's not an untruth. Trash Liz, didn't like the character, she did this, she did that, flip-flop, hate her, get her off the show, and now it's horrible that they killed her off. And I don't understand that reaction. Other than you want her to be happy, okay, fine, but if you hated the character, what do you care which way she left? I don't understand that. That's like an argument that I just can't get. I can't get. People are really mad that she was killed off. Many of the same people that were really mad that she was there.
Right. It was like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to watch next season if Liz is on. I can't stand Liz. Liz is a horrible person, blah, 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 blah. And then they're like, no, bring Liz back. I don't understand. Why did you do this? I'm like, come on, really? I mean, talk about lexical ambiguity here, people.
I just don't know what to say about it. I really don't. It's like I kept getting people, because I've been tagged a lot, and that's fine. I'm not complaining about that. But when people are asking me questions like, how aren't you mad about this? You love Liz and da-da-da. I'm like, I don't know. Why are you? You're the one that told me last week you couldn't stand the character. Like 2 weeks ago, you hated her all season because she's going against Red. You hate her. You don't like, I don't understand what you're writing about. Like, shouldn't you be telling me he, Aaron? At this point, I don't get it.
And I think the thing I find the most fascinating about the reaction to the finale is the fact that we live in a world where we have tragic endings. We had Sopranos, we had Breaking Bad, we had Lost, we had Game of Thrones. I mean, this is not something new. And the number of people that thought that this was going to be a happy ending on a show full of criminals and spies and bad guys from the get-go. I mean, Tom was stabbed in his own house in the first episode of this series. You knew this wasn't going to be a happy show. So anybody that's expecting a happy ending, I'm just like, what show were you watching the entire 8 years? I think that's the thing that's the most frustrating is the people that want that.
It's expectations, right?
Yeah.
A lot of it's expectations. Like you can, I mean, God, you brought up Game of Thrones. What a way to really get people fighting. So I'm going to add to that. So I like Game of Thrones ending. Perfectly fine with it. There's only one little thing I wish they would have added. I wish when Daenerys is flying over King's Landing, I wish she would have heard someone curse her or say something that showed her switch to what happened, in terms of the bells. Because personally, I mean, I was watching the show, I was waiting for that the whole freaking show. I'm like, this is going to happen. I mean, have you watched this lady? She's nuts. And just never happened. Then it finally happened and people are like, I can't believe that she did these things. So that all worked for me. There's definitely some story issues. They rushed some things. They should have fleshed out a couple episodes, I got no issue with that. But in terms of how the story ended, that felt right. It felt like it fit the story completely. Maybe some rushed story points, but it fit the show. The ending did. And I say the same thing here. It fit the show. They might have taken some choices that I wasn't a fan of in terms of the letter and stuff like that. But in terms of the narrative, the overall narrative, it works. And we're going to show you how it works. Yeah, we're going to be those guys in just a minute. And we're going to use Jon's own interview clips to do it because he's been illustrating many points as we went, whether he even realizes it. I don't even know if he knows it, but he has been.
Yeah, and I think Game of Thrones is a great example of the rush to the ending, but the ending was still the ending because Daenerys was like, evil wicked in season 3 when she was on the Eastern Shores. Like, you're just like, what is she doing? And when you set it up that early and someone's like, oh, I can't believe the strange twist at the end. It's like, come on. Like, she was bad from the drop, right?
Not bad. Just
misunderstood and misdirected.
Fractured.
Yeah.
She was fractured. She had definitely a multitude of things going on.
And it's a great synonym for the Blacklist, right? Red is fractured, right? He's going through this change, this understanding, this, hubris, this I can do no wrong, but at the same time, like, am I doing wrong? Arrogance. Yeah, all of that is there, and the ending fits the show. Now, granted, yes, you might not have liked the way season 8 played out, and that was due to circumstance again. It's because they had to write around COVID. They had to write around, Megan's episode count. They had to write around when they could actually shoot things and how they could shoot things, because they had to do more, like Jon was saying in the interview, right? 2 people in a room versus blowing up bridges and buildings. There's things that shift the show, but at the end of the day, the ending, and it's not that the Blacklist is over, right? Season 9 is still coming, but the finale we got is in line with everything we have seen from day one.
And many people have said it's against character, Red's character, for what happened. And I'm like, I don't understand this argument. Like, I'm not knocking you if you believe that, and everybody has a right to see the show however they want, but I don't understand that argument, because the entire time he has been almost flippantly arrogant about telling Liz what she wants to know, which would have solved many of the problems, right? Every confidant of his has said, you need to tell her and get this over with. Dembe, Kaplan, everybody has said, you need to tell her so she understands, so she stops basically acting out, because her life is in turmoil, her life is in chaos, and she doesn't understand why. And it's all because this guy came back into her life and she doesn't know why that's important. So he's been this kind of overbearing parent figure the whole time, that I know better. You just don't know enough. I know better. That's been the thing the whole time. And that got the better of him. And I think maybe you can take it as a case study. There you go. Don't be an overbearing parent, because your kid might self-destruct.
Or you might self-destruct your kid and everything that you're doing as the helicopter parent.
There you go.
Right?
So I think that there's definitely some things there that are important to play with.
And I think there's one thing that Jon said. Jon was very specific about this in one of the conversations, where he basically told us exactly who Red was on the show.
For anyone to go in and be a bad guy against Reddington, who is the bad guy of the show.
Red is a bad guy.
Red is a bad guy. He is the show's bad guy, from the lips of the guy who made the character.
And I remember, and this has been an issue, I think, with many fans for years, because, you've always been stuck on your Red Arena thing, which is fine. I think worked out for you, not so much me. But the whole Red is a bad guy, every time I've said that on the show, I get just chastised.
Hate mail.
By many, many people. Hate mail. Like, literally, for even saying he's a villain, he's not a good guy, da-da-da-da. And it's just, I get it. Spader is charismatic as hell. I understand, man. He can act the hell out of a scene. I get it. But he's still a villain. He still does a lot of bad things. He's more bad than good. It's a villain. It doesn't mean that he doesn't do, I think the best villains have a story you can understand or you can relate to. So there is a story that we can relate to. Doesn't make him less of a villain.
Yeah, great example.
No matter what the motives are, he's still a villain.
Mr. Glass, right, from the Unbreakable.
Sure, that's a good one.
Yeah, totally misunderstood, had a horrible life, and he just becomes a villain, but you can get behind why he's doing what he's doing. Even from the show itself, Frederick Barnes from the first season. Like, he's a bad guy, but he just wants to save his kid. Like, you understand the motivations that are there. It's just what it is, but
Parallelism
all the way.
Well, we're going to get into more with Jon. And speaking of, let's start a little bit here with some Twitter stuff. So on Twitter in particular, someone mentioned the Blacklist comics as canon, which is true, which still only shows things after 1991 post-transformation of created Red. And Jon had this to say back in season 3 about that.
With the comic, and I talked to Nicole about this when she started sort of conceptualizing what it would be, it's still the show. It's a little bit of an alt universe of the show. Like I said, Nicole, wait, you're flashing back to this time period. That's like kind of off limits. And she's like, well, don't worry about that. I'm not going to reveal anything that you don't want to reveal yet within the show. But I do think there's stories there that we can tell.
Yeah, so this is an interesting clip because, we were told that the comics are canon, but here in the interview, it's kind of like an alt universe. And I think the one panel in particular that people are talking about is when Sebastian in The Gambler talks to Red about seeing him at the bar, full beard and all of this stuff. And everybody's going to be like, oh my, like, why does they have a beard? Like, there's no way that if she was post-transformation that she would be able to grow a beard that quickly in 1991, 1992. And, there are just some things in the show that I think people take too literally sometimes. Like, it could just
be...
Us included. Yeah. That it's just a costume. It could be circus beard taped on. Like you don't have to be so literal. Like, she actually grew the beard. Okay. Or he grew the beard because it was post-transformation, or he was always a he, depending on how you want to view it. But yeah, I think those are some of the things where, yes, canon, but technically canon means if it's aired on the show itself, it's considered canon. That's typically the definition of canon. Now, people can say, like, yes, like Revolution comes to mind. Revolution had a comic that came out after the finale because they never got the finale they wanted, and they said, yes, the comic is canon, which came from Eric Kripke specifically, who was the creator of the show. So in this case, applying that logic, Jon said it's kind of like an alt universe. So it's not really canon, but kind of canon. So take that how you will.
Yeah, and many people have asked us, do we feel the show actually definitively answered the question of who is Raymond Reddington?
I think you could go back and look at the show again, and you would realize how big of answers you were giving each season. Because you don't know the ultimate answer right now, but there are big truths that are being woven in that in the end, it's not a traditional way to do TV. You're not supposed to know where you're going. You're not supposed to end it.
And yeah, I think that is 100% yes. This goes to film school interpretation, and it goes to anybody that's watched, 2 years of their life of television, because I track all the shows I watch on this app called TV Time. And unfortunately, that's a lot of TV.
Go outside.
I did go outside the other day. You were the one that was prepping the format. I was biking 30 miles. But yes, I think when you watch the final montage, there is a sequence, and the sequence specifically that I had a problem with, which was the Liz transforming into Katarina. After watching it, every single time someone actually like tweeted me or added me or tagged me or whatever it is that happens on social media, every single time someone did that, I was like, wait, let me double check to make sure I'm still interpreting it the same way. So I watched the montage every time someone had a question about the montage. And I think what I finally landed on is that, like you were saying, Aaron, that Liz is blinking her eyes. She's trying to stay focused. The camera is facing her. And then it switches to looking at Katarina into focus, which means she's looking at Red. And then when it transforms back to Liz, that's actually now switched perspectives. Because then what happens is that when you're on the picture of Liz in the flashback or the montage, the camera then cuts to Red and looking at Red's face. So it's actually like daughter looked at mom, and then Liz looking at, or in this case, mom looking at daughter. So it's like
daughter looking at, I think the better way to say it is daughter looking at Red, or I'm sorry, Liz looking at Red and then fluttering her eyes as she finally realizes that she puts Katarina into focus and realizes, oh, and then the cut back to her is because she can't vocalize because she's dying.
Right.
It's her eyes. It's the same realization moment she had in the previous episode. Because it's so recent, I think that was meant to serve as our cue to realize that she just got it.
But then the cut back goes to Red. So that's why it's Red's perspective of coming back out of that memory, which is the camera's way to tell you specifically, hey, we're shifting perspectives here. Everything you just saw was from Liz's perspective. What we're going to show you next is from Red's perspective. She then closes her eyes, slumps over and dies, drops her head, and then Red kisses her. The camera switches to, over the shoulder of Megan onto James's face. And then you get the flash to Katarina kissing the baby, and then he kisses Masha goodbye. So clearly the reveal is very 2x4 in the face at that point.
Kissed her in the beginning, kissed her in the end. Yep.
Yeah.
That's the way I took it. That's the way I took it. And I remember when a few people thought the mom theory was put to bed, like me, many times. Well, Jon always seemed to keep it alive. Did Daniel tell you about Troy's nutty Red is Liz's mom's theory? Did you?
Oh, I heard about this. Yes,
because I'm watching the finale, the fall finale, and there's a moment, and I'm just asking you because I had to ask, and Troy's like,
well, I'm not going to confirm nor deny.
No. I actually don't. I am unlike most fans of this show. I don't want to know. I actually want to see it pay off.
Okay, cool.
My question is, in the fall finale, there's actually a moment where was it Jilly? Jilly, right?
Yep, Jilly.
Is basically kind of feeling Red up. Is that like a nod to that theory? Because it almost felt like one.
You know what? That was not a nod to that theory.
Okay.
However, I do believe that theory is one of many that sort of stands up. You know, I mean, if you play the logic is, you know, one of the things we look at is what are we saying no to? You know, there are very few things where it's like, okay, let's definitively say this is an answer, because that's hard. You know, very early on we said there's sort of this idea that Red doesn't really ever lie to Liz. He tells partial truths, but he doesn't flat out lie. And I'm telling you, that can be a pain in the room where we're like, oh my God, because he's constantly withholding information. That is one of those that God knows what. When we wrap it all up, I would love if that's actually it, and we play this back. How amazing would that be?
Which was that the reason why Red isn't Liz's father is that Red is Liz's mother.
Love that.
There's a ton of fan theories out there. Everybody, the Lizington Shippers, the Daddy Gators, you name it, the mom theory crew, right? They're following me to the grave, which got put to bed this year, apparently.
They got what this year?
I guess the mom theory is kind of put to bed, right? Because of the Cape May episode. Or so people think. So we ended up the season, of course, with the big reveal. Katerina now out in the open. Or is it? I love the interviews that you guys gave after the thing where Jon's like, well, you know, Raymond is Raymond today. You know, anybody that would know Raymond today would call him Raymond, even though we know he's not Raymond Reddington, the original Raymond Reddington. So with that logic, you have to start to apply that logic. Also would technically apply to Katerina potentially, or you can just take it at face value and say, no, this is Katerina finally coming out of the cold.
Right. What are you getting at here, Troy?
I mean, you hurt my feelings, you know, if it's Katerina. It's like, we've been friends for 6 years.
I know. Heartbreak. Here's what I would say about that. I heard you guys saying something to the fact that I'm only going to answer, you know, well, but it is the Blacklist. So I don't know how I can answer that question. Somebody had asked me that, I can't remember who it was, but there was an interviewer who said, well, just because he calls her Katerina, do we believe that's Katerina? And I'm like, well, how do I answer that? That's a loaded question. You know, no matter what I say, I'm going to give something away.
Any chance you're going to say 100% certain whether this is actually Katerina Rostova or not? Any chance? Or we just
me now?
Yeah.
How well do we know each other?
Yeah,
now?
I know. It's worth a shot.
I better just
don't dig a hole.
Have a drink of my cocktail and ignore that question.
Son of a.
It's always fun. I appreciated the season though, because this time last year we were talking about how we weren't going to be friends anymore because you ruined my theory. And then as the season went along, it kept going like, well, you know, is she Katerina? Is she not Katerina? There was that whole
interesting that's out there. I mean, you know, have we done anything to imply that she's not her mother?
Yes.
like what?
I mean, if you follow the show like we do,
if you follow the show is what you just said to the guy.
I mean, like I'm saying in general, like if you're digging into it, you know that the dialogue is really critical, and the lexical ambiguity is there, and so there's scenes like the one where Red's like, well, your mother is dead. Point blank. Harold is saying things in this episode, in the finale, where he's like, don't touch her mom. Her mom's off limits. It's like, I promise I won't touch her. Even though he clearly wants her dead. And then there's
that's you reading into it, though.
But there was the big one, which was the Belgrade episode, when Ilya was like, you want me to kill your daughter? And then Dom's like, no, I want you to hear my plan. And we're like, oh, that's interesting choice of language. What's that about? But that's the fun of the Blacklist. You can take it any way you want.
Yes. Well, I'm glad that's fun because yes. Okay. Thanks for pointing those out and reminding me. You know, those are three good examples of why I might understand somebody would think she's not really Katerina, but we'll have to revisit that question later, I suppose.
I'm hopeful she is, if that helps.
I know.
I'm hopeful she's not.
I know.
And I love all of these.
I'm sure you do, man.
Well,
I'm sure you do.
It's funny because, like we said, like now you know that the top of the puzzle box looks like, to go back. And he was like, yeah, he never really actually said no. He was always like, well, that's interesting, or love that, or ha ha ha. Like, shut up, Troy. You're ruining my show.
Well, look, and this is my opinion. It isn't anything that anyone else has said, but they very much, Jon brought us into his arms in many ways after learning that. So I think that has, in hindsight, that seems fairly obvious to me that it was because Troy publicly figured it out the earliest. And he's like, all right, I respect this guy. Named a hospital after him. I think that's intentional. Like, that's a very important thing that was done. I would still like one. I'm just saying. But I think it was a very intentional thing that was done to point the finger to Troy and say, good job, man. Nice props, I guess is the word I was looking for. And he's kind of not shot that theory down once during all the times we've talked to him. And I've tried so many times. And I think, now why? Now, I know some people are still fighting and angry and they don't believe that and they see something else, and that's your right. Perfectly fine. I'm just saying I'm very resolved to that was the solution. And he said specifically in interviews going into these 2 episodes that this is the end of a story. Like, this is the end of this particular story. And then what happens in season 9 will be a different story.
And there's nothing wrong with that. It can be a different story.
No, absolutely. It just, didn't work out the way many people wanted. Shows don't, I get being upset that the character is dead because I love Liz, the character. I didn't want her to die. On the same token, it's not my story to tell. And I don't feel robbed, for any reason that just because I didn't get what I wanted or what I thought the show should have done. I wanted to be right. I think everybody wants to be right. I wanted it to be, the one I probably landed on the most was an uncle, right? I think over the years I've landed on, never discounted Red Arena. So you can stop telling me I did. I don't understand people. Go listen to the podcast. There's times where I thought it was put to bed and then like 4 episodes later, be like, well, that's back in play. It is what it is. But I've never landed solidly on anything, but the closest I came was probably uncle. So sure, I would have loved for that to be right. But once I come to the conclusion that this is the answer, okay. It's fit everything along the way. It really has. So I'm good with it. I'm good with the solution. It's just portions of other stuff that I have a problem with, but the solution I'm good with.
Yeah.
And in regards to, if you remember back in the Kirk episode, the first whisper.
Oh yeah.
Really would have liked to have.
I forgot there was a second whisper.
Yeah. Really would have liked to not had 2 whispers in the show, but we got 2 whispers. In regards to that first whisper, when Red says, well, first he says, she's my daughter because he's doped up and he says, she's my daughter. And then, there's also where he whispers the truth to Kirk's ear. But when specifically Red says, she's my daughter, here's what Jon had to say about that.
Let me try to masterfully evade that.
Please do.
I think that answers in the same way that I was saying, I love it when my wife and I can have 2 different perspectives on an element of a show or a movie or the way something ends or whatever. That is an example that I think is really fun and maybe is frustrating for people, but tough. I feel like on one hand, you can believe that, yes, he is admitting that she is his daughter and that would obviously mean that he is her father. You can interpret that he is drugged and within an inch of his life, and so he is telling Alexander Kirk what he wants to hear. You can include Aaron's mother theory because he didn't say father, right? What? How does that work?
Sure.
He didn't
Troy's
say,
theory.
Yes,
Troy's
I'm her
theory.
I'm sorry, Aaron.
Yeah. Don't you put that on me.
Troy, you can embrace Troy's theory, which says, yes, I guess he said daughter, not I'm her father. So even in that, and by the way, there's probably more that I'm not thinking of, but right there are 3 versions of the truth.
Well, I think that's a really telling point. It's the what do you want to call it? Blueprint on how to interpret the show. I mean, that's what I think this was the greatest thing about the Blacklist the entire time, was that everything could be taken more than one way. When that's what kept everything interesting. I mean, to this
it's
day,
what kept fans engaged. It's what kept fans engaged the whole time.
That's the whole point.
Or a big portion
Keep
of it.
the TV show on the air. Keep the people employed. Do the thing that is what the business's job is to do. Whether or not you want to go for the ride on the way you want to go on the ride, that's up to you, right? Some people love the puzzle games. Some people were like, just make it straightforward. I'm so done with the show. I'll tune into the last episode when it's all done. And a lot of people did. A lot of people watched the finale or these last 2 episodes of season 8 because they wanted to know the answer. And that's fine. You can jump to the end of a book. That's perfectly okay. There's a lot of people that do that and then determine if they want to go back and read the rest of it. Some people might actually go back and watch the entire show. I have one friend I know that's going to do that because she only watched the pilot in the last 2 episodes and then said, I want to see what this is all about now. So then she's going to go back through it.
Did she get it from 2 episodes? What did she get from those 3 episodes, I guess?
From the pilot, her answer was, well, it's clearly that he's her father. And then in 821, she's like, WTF, what did I just watch? And then in the finale, she's like, oh, snap. Like, that's different. So he was her mother the whole time. And I was like, yep, you got it.
Okay.
So someone had...
Just curious.
Yeah, no podcast influence, no internet influence, and only 3 episodes of the show. Clearly was able to figure out what happened in the finale.
So, John, if you're listening, you could have made this in 3 episodes. Is really what we're hearing. You drugged this out.
Aaron said that, not me.
You could have knocked this out a lot sooner. I'm just letting you know.
Well, John always said that in the interviews, right? He's like, I'm always the guy that wants to get to the end of this really quickly. And Eisendrath was one who's like, no, we got to stretch it out. We got to do the da-da-da. It's like, so yeah, he could have done it in 3 episodes probably.
Okay, so here's an important question, and I've seen this asked a lot, so I'm very curious. Do you think this, accept it if you will, accept it if you won't, whatever, if you don't accept it, but for the purposes of this question, you would have to accept it. Do you think Red, being Katerina Rostova, changes the character of Red in any way or the mythology in any way?
No, because I think that there are interesting stories, and I believe we covered this on the finale podcast last week, but it was so late I don't remember. But I think one of the interesting stories that I think would be great is that Velov was always chasing Katerina, never was able to find Katerina. Now that this information is in the wind inside of the Townsend organization, whoever is still remaining in the Townsend organization, that information is going to get out, right? And what if there's a cool story about, maybe it's not Velov, but maybe it's Velov's kid, right? Son, daughter, whatever.
Exactly.
You could have a total big bad there that's totally chasing down Red and trying to find, like, well, where the hell is he? What is he doing? And then you're back on the got to stay one step ahead. Like, what's the next hubris thing I'm going to do in order to stay ahead potentially? And that could set up another, I can't believe I'm going to say it out loud, 8 years of the show.
Easy killer.
But it could. I mean, that's the beautiful thing, right? You can have a whole new chapter in a, what is it, like call it a trilogy if you want. 24 seasons broken up into 8-season trilogies.
Right. And here's what I have to say about that. Like, the mythology, it doesn't change the mythology because that is the mythology. Like, it checks, it fits. It doesn't change anything about the mythology because it fits the actual mythology. So will you find a couple road bumps here and there, like the burns that we talked about last week? Maybe. But on the same token, there's way more that checks completely than any speed bumps you're going to find. So overall, I would say it works. I've gone back and thought about it 1,000 times and I'm like, it just works, man. I mean, you can not like it. That's fine. I understand that. But if you don't like it because of plot holes or mythology, I don't have a problem with that. If you have a problem with it any other way, I have a problem with that because I think that's a completely different topic that I don't want to address here. But it's very much, it checks. In terms of plot and mythology, I think it checks. So I don't have a problem with that.
And if you want to know how well it checks, Aaron was on Twitter the other day and he was responding to, I believe it was friends of the podcast, Takata Psycho, Jen and Tessa that do the Keen Minds podcast. They do a really great job. You should go check that out. But like he was responding to Jen and I swear to God, like I was sleepwalking and I wrote the tweet because he literally sounded like me. So if Aaron can say exactly what I would say in response defending the finale, then you know that Aaron has truly gotten on board with how it all played out. And Aaron's not one that's going to defend anything unless he believes in it. And if he believes that it tracks, he's going to defend it.
Yeah, I am weird like that. Like, I just say, okay, that's your opinion, man. But if I firmly believe it, I'm like, okay, well, here we go. Here's why. And, you know, I'm not trying to be condescending or snarky or anything else. I'm just like, I see it as this. I don't know if you don't see it that way, fine, but it checks. You know, I've done the research too, pretty thoroughly, like 8 years worth. Lots of 8 years worth.
200 plus podcast episodes and
I wasn't in season one,
right?
I wasn't in part. I think I might have guessed it on an episode or something like that, but I joined season 2. So I wasn't actually part of season 1. So technically,
you figured it out in a lot faster time.
Yeah, I figured it out in 7 seasons instead of 8, but I watched the show the whole time though. So there you go. That worked out. Now, in terms of changing Red the character, you know, here's one thing I gotta say, and I'm gonna say it as subtly as I can. If ever I give Jon Bokenkamp all the credit in the world, because I firmly believe that it was proven that Red is Katarina. If you don't agree with me, I don't know, skip ahead, whatever. But I firmly believe it was demonstrated. Like, he didn't say it out loud. I don't think you can say it out loud when the show's still going on. You know, they're going to want to play with that a little bit more. But I do think it was clearly demonstrated for the audience. Now, I give him all the credit in the world. I have all the respect for him in the world, because as long as they don't drastically change something, which I don't think they will, I think they'd have to retcon some things to even make a change at this point. It's very clearly demonstrated to me at this point. He came up with this idea, a decade ago?
Yeah, like 2012, like December 2012.
Sure. Think how much foresight that has to take on a story like that, where you have a female character that is going to become a male character, but it's going to be presented as a male character the whole time. Only in flashbacks would you see the female character. Think how much foresight and kind of boldness that takes to put that on the air on network TV. That's always been my biggest thing. Like, network's not going to do it. And if they did, they wouldn't do it justice. And for him to do it and make that attempt to make that swing, I think is extremely impressive. And I think we, as the audience, this is a personal opinion, we as the audience could take something from this, because the character of Red, as we've known him for the last 8 years, is not anything different because of knowing that. Doesn't change who Red is one iota. That is who Red is. That character always felt that way, refers to himself that way, always felt that way. Not necessarily as Raymond Reddington, the name, but in terms of the character of Red. Yeah, they're just in general, just that person. That's the skin he felt comfortable in his whole life. And I think we can take some kind of knowledge from that, or learn a little something from that, that if you had a knee-jerk reaction to that, because it doesn't change him at all, doesn't change that character, still had the same mission, still did the same thing, still made the same call, same decision, same everything else. If you feel like it does change the character, maybe it's a good time to think, why do I think that? You know, I really feel like I'm not saying that to be like negative or anything else. I'm just saying it doesn't change the character at all. So if you feel that way, why do you feel that way? Maybe it's just a knee-jerk reaction. Maybe you just didn't like it because you had a really well-held theory for years and you really had believed it wholeheartedly, you know, whatever it is. I'm just saying it's worth an inward look, personally. And I'm always about introspection. I think it's always important to look at yourself and say, why do I think that? You know, why do I feel this way about this thing? Or why do I feel that way about this thing? It's not me judging or anything else. Just, I like to know why. And I think it really points to the picture that it didn't matter. It didn't matter that he used to be Katarina. None of that matters. He is
Raymond
Red
Reddington. Yeah.
And even in the name is Red. I keep saying this. I'm like, he really told us from the very beginning, everything about me is a lie. He goes by Red when the character's name is Raymond Reddington. Turns out 3 seasons later when we finally see her, was it 3? Yeah, 3 seasons later when we finally see her, she's got red hair. Oh my goodness. Like, I'm just saying, kind of on the nose.
Yeah. And, you know, I'm a criminal from the get-go. I'm a criminal. Criminals are notorious liars. Everything about me is a lie. Right there, it tells you exactly what kind of character he's going to be. And I think one of the things that was great about this podcast in particular, not that the podcast is over either, we did this show specifically in the way we did it because we felt that this was a character story. We didn't do a breakdown of shot by shot, scene by scene, episode of episode, like many TV and podcasts do, we said, let's talk about Donald. Did what happened to Donald this week make sense? Did what happened to Cooper this week make sense? And there's times where we've called him out and said, no, this character turn was stupid, or this character, like they're writing Liz poorly. Like this is not the Liz character that we have come to know. And I think at the end of the day, what we can say is that Raymond Red Reddington, James Spader's portrayal of him on screen, has been very consistent the entire time. He has been very adamant about his feelings toward Liz and what can happen and what can't happen to Liz, even to the point when he said, well, I have killed for less, right? Like he's willing to kill his own daughter and people have a problem with that. He didn't kill her daughter. He talked about it. And if any parent knows anything, yeah, he's venting. Every parent does it. I'm like, please, I would sell my kid in a heartbeat the other day. And I love her with everything, all fiber of my being, but it's just venting. That's all it is. So you have to take a step back and try to not pick everything apart and just look at it on the whole and say, this is a parent who is doing everything they possibly can to protect the daughter without understanding the fact that the more they intervene and the more they withhold, the more it's actually putting her in danger.
There you go. I do find it funny because I have seen people say that. They're like, what parent would say things like that if that's the case? I'm like, all of them. You ever heard the old Chris Rock joke? If you ain't never thought about killing somebody, you ain't never been in love. Like that's, it holds for parents too. It's very true. I mean, it's just, you get mad, you get frustrated, you vent. Doesn't mean you actually think that. It's just venting. And I feel like go watch those scenes again. That completely checks with that line of thinking.
Why would Stepanoff want to threaten Elizabeth's life when he was so excited and happy to see her after 35 years? It's because the business comes first in Stepanoff's mind. And if Liz is getting in the way, the business of the Blacklist is what's important to Stepanoff. And that's why Red had to correct him and say, no, she is off limits. I don't work for you. So that tracks also.
You know what? I think it's time to get to the man, the myth, the dancing legend, Jon Bokenkamp. I don't know if he actually dances, but I'm going to throw that in there just so people can think of it when they think of him. And his delightful hair. He's got a wrestler-esque head of hair, just so you guys know if you've never seen Jon Bokenkamp. It is delightful. Did that sound? It probably sounded a little too... Yeah? Okay. All right. Well, but first, we want to take a quick second to say thank you to those of you that are supporting the show by going to Patreon. That's Patreon, patreon.com/theblacklistgsm. Special big thanks to our honorary blacklister, Patricia, and a special shout out to our task force members, Judy and Sharon, Rory, Karen, Bobby, Jens, and now Mary, all official task force members. All those people receive cool gifts from us, and you can get a cool gift as well if you donate at the $20 level or higher. And at some point this summer, we are going to do an exclusive Patreon episode where every patron can ask us any question they want, one question that we will discuss or debate on the show. That's going to be Patreon exclusive. It will not be in the podcast feed. So if you want to hear it or partake in it, you have to be a patron. So go to where, Troy?
Patreon. That's patreon.com/theblacklistgsm. And a big shout out to Patricia. For those of you that don't know, Patricia does blacklistdeclassified.net. There's a link to her page on our page over there on the website. Patricia actually has like all the scripts. So when you talk about like, God, Troy, how do you remember all that stuff? I have Patricia to thank for that because Patricia literally has all the scripts. She's got all the music cues. She's got everything on that site that you'd want to know. And because of that, we've been able to do this podcast because we have basically an encyclopedia of the show handy. She just went through and redid all of the tags on the website to make it easier to search for stuff. So if you're like, hey, I remember that thing. Does that track? I want to go back and research, blah, 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 blah. blacklistdeclassified.net. Go check that out. And if you don't remember the link, just come to our page. We have a link that'll take you over to her page as well. So go ahead and click on the fedora, throw a couple bucks our way, be part of that special Patreon episode later this summer.
All right, Blacklisters, why are we here today? Well, we kind of alluded to it a little bit. We've played a bunch of clips so far. You know, this is going to be an extra, probably special, extra long episode. And that's because we love this guy. In case you didn't know, Jon Bokenkamp put a note on Twitter to the fans last week saying he is leaving the show. Now, I want to read Jon's statement, and I want to say, like, we're not going to get into inside baseball or anything else. I think Troy and I would can both say confidently, I consider Jon a friend at this point.
Oh, yeah.
Do you agree with that?
Yeah.
Okay. Like I said, not going to do inside baseball, but it was his decision. So please stop that kind of speculation. It was. We've known about it. So he's been writing to it. In response to that, here's what he says. Now, this is his statement, and this is what he's saying. So I would take it at his word.
Yeah.
Because it's true.
It's not a network release statement. It wasn't press release to Deadline or Hollywood. He literally put this on Twitter to the fans because it's Jon, and that's what Jon is.
Yes, he did not send it to outlets like every other entertainer does. He wanted to tell you himself, and I think people should remember that sometimes. All right, so dear Blacklisters, this is Jon's words. I wanted to write you directly to let you know that I've made the difficult decision to leave the Blacklist. I love this show with all of my heart, and it's been an incredible journey, but after 8 years, I feel it's time for me to step out of my comfort zone, try something new, and explore a few of the other characters and stories that have been crawling around in my head. While I'm excited about this next chapter, I'd be lying if I didn't admit that I have mixed emotions about my departure. The Blacklist is a family, and saying goodbye is difficult. I already miss my fellow writers, the brilliant cast, and our fearless crew, but more than anything, I will miss all of you, the fans. I've penned my share of screenplays that were never made and are sitting on a shelf gathering dust, which is why this experience has been such a blessing. Having the ability to tell a new story every week to an audience excited to watch is a dream come true. I've loved following your tweets and podcasts, your recaps and Tumblr pages, your art and theories and fan fiction. I am likely biased, but the Blacklist fan base is not only the most dedicated and ravenous in television, but whip smart and hard as hell to fool. You are the lifeblood of our show, and it's your enthusiasm that leaves me feeling, more than anything, grateful. I genuinely believe the series remains full of life, creatively strong, and the bright days lie ahead. So now I join you, as a fan, to see where the Blacklist takes us next. Thank you for 8 incredible seasons. Jon Bokenkamp.
Emotional when you hear it out loud. It was like emotional reading it, but like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, very, very much so. Regardless of, I assume that's because I put my spin on it. Like honestly, that sounded better than if Jon delivered it, because there'd be a lot of ums. So I did him a favor, really. All right, regardless of where you land on the season 8 finale, the finale, that's what I'm going to call it, for anyone who doubts Jon's love of the fans, regardless of where they have their theories planted, he has always been one of the most accessible showrunners in Hollywood. I've talked to a lot of directors and actors and producers, and Jon is the best. He is genuine. He's one of a kind. And sometimes I feel like we don't appreciate how open and genuine he has been with not only the podcast, but the audience as a whole. So I want you to listen to a clip from our season 4 interview where he speaks directly to that.
And that's why I like listening to the podcast and reading the comment sections. When people are picking up those kinds of details, those little, like you're saying, you can put together an imposter theory by things that you're tracking back to season 1, or the father stuff with the scars on the back. That's why I love our audience so much. They're smart people. This is not, we bust our asses here, and we're here far too much. But it is hard working toward an end goal and trying not to get there too fast, and to not break the mythology, and to have all of the clues ultimately add up and yet take our time getting there is an incredibly difficult thing to do. I think one of the things that is so fun about the show is there can be these theories, and you could probably justify all of them. I mean, you can walk away from at different parts in the show where they all add up. And that is a testament to our writers and how hard they try to paint within the lines to keep the story straight, but also fun to play with and have a conversation with the audience almost through the show as they're looking for clues and we're giving them clues and things are being picked up on. I mean, it's like almost an interactive experience of it's certainly nothing like a movie where you write it and you go away and a year and a half later it comes out and people see it or not. There is a conversation to it that's a lot of fun.
And again, for some of you thinking that this is some Jon storming off or taking his toys and leaving, or his ego was impacted, I got to admit, I've talked to a lot of creative types in Hollywood, and you are way more grounded than most people that I've talked to.
Oh, just wait. I'm going to become such a prick and such a egomaniac. Just wait. Thank you for saying so.
Just so you know, he never has. Not once in all of these years has Jon been anything but kind, genuine. You hear that word a lot, right? Genuine, because it's true. And honest with us. He's been honest. He's definitely done the circle, but he's been honest with us.
Yeah, and he put up with my crap a lot, to be quite honest. I mean, I remember when it was season 4, 30 episodes with the Blacklist Redemption, and I literally was just like, hey, Jon, here's an idea. Like, you put in a lot into this show. What Kathy deserves, his wife, Kathy, what Kathy deserves is a nice weekend in Chicago. Come out to Chicago, show her a good time. All we ask is that you come just hang out with us for 1 hour at this crazy Comic-Con event. And Jon was like, that sounds cool. Let's do it. And I was like, there was no way that pitch was going to fly, but it did. And he showed up, and you guys all showed up, and it was fantastic, and it was great. And we did it again in season 6. And it's just like those kind of moments are just like, wow, that's like super, super cool. Right. And then, like, I'll insider baseball this one because it's up on my Facebook page, but I was at Disneyland with my family on vacation right before the finale, and Jon and his family happened to be at Disneyland the same day. Now, any other normal fan would be like, oh my gosh, I got to go find him, hunt him down in the park, like all that stuff. I was literally sitting on a ride, and he literally ran from one end of the park to the other, and then went to the wrong spot, and then came and found me somewhere else, and literally came and found me. And I'm like, that's cool, because like normal people in Hollywood don't come find you. Like there's
That's
only
he's a friend.
Yeah, he's
That's
a friend.
Why. He's a friend.
Yeah, and I think there's, like I said, there's one other person in Hollywood that I've met. His name's Kevin Sizemore, who did that. Aaron and I were there, actually on the lot at Paramount, meeting up with Jon and company. And Kevin actually drove from his house just to come see us and say hey. So that's the things you remember, because if he's able to do that stuff, then he knows that he's genuine when he's talking to us in those interviews.
Very much so. And I expect the next time I go to a theme park that he's going to fly out there and just run over to say hi. I'll be at Great Flags at some point in Chicago sometime soon. So just heads up.
There you go.
All right. Well, in fact, one time, this is another just point to illustrate what they've done, not just Jon, but the show itself. But one time an avid Blacklist fan passed away suddenly, and Jon and his team added a character into the show named Lulu in her honor.
Super, super kudos to you guys for pulling off the Lulu McClellan tribute. That was 100% fantastic. Round of applause for you guys.
Yeah. I got to tell you, I got a little dewy-eyed. I was driving in, I don't know if it was this morning or yesterday, listening. I was actually listening to your podcast about it, talking about it, and giving us a shout out for that. That was very sweet. I sort of took a little step back from Twitter and Facebook and all those things after the election, and also just being busy. But I did peek, and I heard about Lulu, and it was like, okay, we got to do something. And I'm glad it was well received.
Oh, very much so. People are still talking about it. That was a beautiful moment.
That's
Thanks
great.
for that. That was literally fantastic.
That was a moment that I was like, Lulu, she loves Spader, and she's not going to get to see the ending. And oh my gosh, it's like, I never expected this to happen, that they would actually name a character in the show for her. One that specifically was responsible for saving Spader's life, or Red's life in this case. Like, how cool is that? Like, no one does that stuff. No one.
Nope. No one does. And, I'm sure maybe someone has, but I don't know of anybody that's done it. So I'm going to say no one. And you know what? We're going to talk about Jon a little bit more, but first the music. Jon has always had a heavy hand in the musical selection of the show. Do you have any songs that were new to you from the Blacklist that you still listen to this day?
I mean, that's why I made the Apple Music playlist, because I couldn't stand the fact that it was on Spotify.
Oh, God, I wasn't trying to make a plug, man.
But I mean, I love the songs that much. I found the Spotify playlist. I could listen to them on my computer, but I didn't want to have to pay the $9.99 a month or whatever it was to get it on my iPhone. So I was like, oh, you know what? I'll just make the same playlist on Apple Music, and then we'll put both links up there, and then everybody can be happy. I enjoy Radical Face. I enjoy a lot of them. I think the one thing that was cool about the show, and specifically about Jon, like Jon really loves music. Like he like geeks out on it. I think he even said it in one interview where he listens to music and then gets to write stories, where Eisendrath's the other way. He's like, I can't hear the music. I just got to write the story and then put the music in later. And it's one of the things that I would be listening to new alternative music and things that I felt fit the show. And I would literally just send them to Jon and just be like, hey, Jon, go ahead and check out this tune. Go ahead and check out this tune. And one time I sent him one, and it was actually from my wife. And she said, hey, check out this No Roots by Alice Merton. And I sent it to Jon, and Jon was like, dude, this is like perfect. I know exactly where this is going to go. And sure enough, it's the scene where Liz is finally walking out of the woods at the end of Ruin. And I'm like, no, that's cool. Like we influenced that in the show. And then, so it just goes to show like how cool he was to the fans again, because he literally took my wife's suggestion and said, yes, let me go ahead and use that. When he's got he's got Bissell, he's got himself, he's got teams of people at Sony. He doesn't need me sending him crap all the time. I enjoyed sharing music with him and enjoyed getting the music back from him as well. So I have a very eclectic playlist now of stuff. It was great.
In terms of songs we actually listen to, Gamble Everything for Love. I love that song. I've listened to it. It's on my jogging mix. I have it every time I jog. Trouble is a song that I listen to all the time. Like there's a few that I definitely have picked up over the years where I'm like, oh, that's a great song. Because the only time I really listen to music is when I'm running. And that's when a few of those have been added to the mix. And I've even actually added a few because I felt like they were songs that should be in the show. It feels like something Jon would pick. So I would add them to the mix just because it felt like that's a good beat. I like the beat, and it feels like a Blacklist song. I mean, that's a weird thing to say, but that's how much I think the music has been influential in the show in terms of creating a character all in itself.
Well, and I think there's songs too that you can never listen to again because they've been in the show in certain ways. Obviously, Sound of Silence from Disturbed. Like every time that comes on, is like, nope, not ready. Can't do it again. Sorry.
Ooh, we disagree. Every time I hear it, yeah. That's all that's you don't do the same thing?
No,
weird.
I do not.
I feel like it deserves a applause.
Or the, was it the version of Hallelujah they used at Agnes's baptism? Like that one was really good.
That was a good song.
Yeah. Or even this latest rendition when they were in the park in the finale. Somewhere Only We Know, that version of it was just like, man, it's so good. Like where they find these covers, because sometimes they use covers in TV shows and they're just not good. And the only reason they're using the cover is because it's easier to clear and it's a lot cheaper than using the original. But every time they found a cover for a song for the Blacklist, it was spot on every single time.
So are you worried in any instance in terms of his contributions not being there musically?
No, I don't think so. I mean, Bissell's still part of the show, and Bissell's got more than enough music to figure out what needs to go where, and Dave Porter's still part of the show, and he writes fantastic backing tracks, and no, not at all. I don't think there's going to be an issue there.
All right, so Jon himself, let's take a trip down memory lane. Troy, this is very important. You handle this. Take us through the origin story of the Blacklist as it pertains to Jon Bokenkamp.
So Jon Bokenkamp was a writer. He was going to Hollywood. He wrote movies, plenty of treatments that never got picked up, waited tables over at Universal, specifically while he was trying to, and I think he parked cars or something too over at Universal, if memory serves. And he was trying to sell a script for the movie Taking Lives. So he sells the script, the movie gets made, and things are going, and seems like he's got his career and he's off and running. But then he's wrote a couple treatments. Finally, he's working on this pilot for the Blacklist. And he works on it with John Fox over there at Sony. Eisendrath is brought on board. They tweak it, they change it, whatever. And I've seen this where people were complaining post-finale about, oh, well, the original pilot back in December 2012, it was all about blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, it's a draft. Like things change. It's not canon until it's on the TV screen. And so just because there was a draft of some pilot of what the show could have been, doesn't mean that that's what the show was. So they tweaked it, they changed it. And Jon has said specifically over the years, that, he had an idea for a show and an ending that he wasn't aware that the ending was ever going to get made and past the censors at the network. And that statement right there was enough to be like, oh, well, that's an interesting twist. Like, what kind of an ending would you need to get past the censors? And then when he talked about how Spader finally got the job, like days, like hours before the pilot was shot, and Jon told him the ending in the back of Spader's yard and the character, and Spader was just like, yeah, I love it. Let's do it. Because Spader doesn't pick characters out of the thin air. Spader literally looks for the things that are going to be interesting and fun and something he can sink his teeth into. And this is exactly that character. And now we know why that character was the way it was. So I think all of that being said, it's just a good setup to understand where he was coming from when he decided to make the show. Now, sure, 100%, right? Eisendrath gets brought on board, and you get the things that are very similar to Alias in a lot of ways, right? You have a daughter working with her father who may be doing different things, and there's a hidden mother somewhere who has a very similar name in Irina, and there's Nick's Pizza and Joey's Pizza, which was the thing. It was like, yes, sure, there is a lot of stuff that is very similar to Alias and feels like maybe it's a ripoff at times from the show into the Blacklist. But at the end of the day, the concepts, the original structure, the original idea came from Bokenkamp himself. And I think that's something that we should all be proud of for putting forward in 2012 and sticking with it till all the way to 2021.
I'd call it an homage, not a ripoff.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's fun.
He's full aware that people, I think it's more of a, here's an Alias thing. You Alias fans will get it. You know, that's more of an homage to me.
It's why when we were sitting outside the bunker, we were like, ooh, it's a Rambaldi site.
Very much so.
And I think where you're going with this, Aaron, is you want me to introduce like how we came up with the mother theory or even the imposter theory initially. I think is really the big thing, because, you know, through all of that and then understanding that Jon writes for strong female characters and that Jon uses Kathy, his wife, as the writing partner because he doesn't have a writing partner. It just seemed like, oh, they're writing a story for a woman. And then you're just kind of like, oh, well, that's interesting. You know, we've gone through this story before. And I think the biggest thing about it was that when we were it was a joke. I mean, literally for us on the podcast, that's first season, it was a joke. It was literally like, oh, well, Kiefer was supposed to get the job. Wouldn't it be cool if he rips off the Scooby mask and boom, there's Kiefer Sutherland at the end of the show. Ha ha ha. He's an imposter. And then we were like, no, wouldn't it be cool? Like if he rips off the mask and it's actually Liz's mom, that'd be cool. Ha ha ha.
You say that now, but I remember talking to you about it first season because I wasn't on the show. I wasn't on the podcast at that time. And I remember you talking very seriously about it.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. I get what you're saying, like on the podcast, but in terms of privately, you very much believed that was a possibility.
Yeah. Cause I thought like, damn, that is like the coolest thing on TV. Like who would have the guts to put that on NBC? And you can actually go back to the season 5 100th episode when we were on set talking to Spader. And Spader telling us, like, when he was talking to people, like, what the hell is Bob Greenblatt doing putting this show on broadcast TV?
I remember when the first season, I was at the Golden Globes, and I had met, when I'd finished doing Boston Legal, I, continued doing some film work and so on, but I was still looking for another series to do. And I met with the heads of most of the cable networks to see if they had anything that was of interest to do. And I had met one of them was the guys who were at AMC, and I didn't find anything really anywhere just at the time. It was a matter of timing. I just didn't find anything at that point. And then this crossed my threshold. And I read this and was very excited about doing it. And then we did it. And then I'm out of the Golden Globes in December. So the show had aired for that autumn.
Right.
And I'm walking in, and the guys at AMC are all standing out in front there. And they pulled me over and they said, how the hell did Bob Greenblatt get this show on Broadcast Network? I agree. It's like, what the hell is it doing on a Broadcast Network? And I said, yeah, I agree.
And yeah, because it feels very much like a cable show, like an HBO or a TNT or something, or maybe an FX. But at the same time, I think that when you sit back and think about it, it's like there's plenty of time in this show where we bring up the mother theory and Jon, like we said, just completely dodges it, but never ever discounts it.
He's never wanted to shut it down. There is one, he has shut other ones down, believe it or not. I know it might seem like he hasn't, but when something gets proven, he is willing to go on the record and say, nope, that's not the case. That's not the case. Very rare, but especially like as things have been proven incorrect or untrue, he has committed to them.
Very specific about Andying. He was very specific about Raymond Reddington, the naval intelligence officer, being dead and being Liz's father.
Red Reddington, as we know him, is not Liz's father. Would you go on the record and say that that's definitive?
Raymond Reddington, as we know him, is not Liz's father. You're trying to trap me here. I can feel this. I got to repeat myself. I got to repeat this question back. I'll answer it in the affirmative. Yes, Raymond Reddington is Elizabeth Keene's father, but the character that James Spader has been playing for 5 years is not Raymond Reddington.
Bam! That answers, it clarifies. It's exactly all I wanted. I'm good. Interview's over.
Yeah, very, very many times has he come out and just flat out said if there's something definitive, he has said it on this show.
He confirmed actually before the 821 episode with the outwardly reveal about Katerina, the fake arena situation.
But yeah, he admitted in 20 to being in 13 to having the Sikorsky archive, which was given to him by a friend, that your mother was not killed, which he has said repeatedly, and that he was, sort of put on this earth to both hide Katerina and to keep Elizabeth safe, and so, yeah, I think you can take all that at face value. Very liberating, huh? How about that?
It's got to feel good.
Look at me giving you an actual answer. Wow, this is like talking to my therapist. This is so cathartic.
He confirmed that she was a plant. The one that we saw on screen was a plant. The recent one.
Yes.
Lilia. So that's the one that was a fake. And he confirmed that before we went into that 821. So, he has confirmed stuff in the past. And he has kind of talked about the blacklisters themselves, and including back in our season 4 interview discussing the Jinn.
It's screwed up, and to me, that's a bad. If you're forcing somebody to change their gender because you don't like their sexual preference, that is bottom of the bottom. And so we've tried to find bad guys that are not. It's less about being topical and of the moment, although that does happen to be topical at the moment. But it's more about trying to find some kind of humanity in why we should save these people, why they should be taken out, and not just about arms deals and drug dealers and the kinds of criminals we've seen before, but something that really resonates and has an emotional, heart to it.
As well as the mom and child with golden blood.
Yeah, because you had like the story with the mom with the golden blood, and ended up having to kill herself in order to give her. It was the heart, right, that she had to give to the son in order for him to live.
Yeah, to save her son. Yeah, ultimately let herself die to save her child. And a nice parallel of how far will a parent go for a child?
I like how you said parent and not mother.
Let it go, Troy.
Well, she was a mother. Yeah. In that case, how far a mother would go for her child.
And I think those are important ones to think about, because I know people will sit there and say things about, there's no way that it could be, Liz's mom and Red Arena and blah, blah, blah. But all the way back in season 4 and season 5, there are these stories about a parent and a child, or a mother and a child, or, how far would someone go for their child? Those stories were woven. Frederick Barnes is the first one I could think of all the way back in season 1. Those stories were planted all along. So yes, is there people out there that would think, oh, Red's the father because Frederick Barnes was a father? Yes, but it was a parent-child relationship. And it just depends that they couldn't tell you father or mother, because then you would have the answer. So yes, it might have felt like you were strung along, but that's because that was the point of the show. The point of the show was to say it is a family relationship, whether it's parental biologically or parental adoptively or something, but it was a very parental love that was going on, because you had all of these episodes that basically said parental, like a flashing neon sign.
Yeah, very much so. We've talked about it throughout the years. How it seems very parental or familiar, definitely, at some point. And, I feel like it's been answered, but I'm sure there's still people out there still listening to this going, no, yeah, yelling at the radio, which it's fine. You're right.
Even Eisendrath, right, on that clip we played at the finale of Us on the season 6 DVD, where Eisendrath was like, we get why people would say that it's something familial. We understand that. But he didn't say, no, it's not. He just was like, we understand. We get it.
Yeah. And they've already confirmed one parent is dead. And they've also confirmed one parent is alive.
So there you go.
There you go. All right. Well, a fun bit of looking back on Jon's interviews is how he gave us more answers in retrospect than we knew. He told us back in season 4 how to view the show.
Within each of those are real, ways to look at the show and ways to embrace it. And I think, look, Spader said very early on when we very first met about the show, I went to his house and we talked about it. And he had always felt like, and I agree, that you feel like you know exactly who this guy is. The thing that's fun about Raymond Reddington is once you finally get the answer about what you think he is or what he's doing or what he's up to, you realize that you really had no idea.
Well, then you must have really enjoyed that fall finale where we were like, Mother Theory, no Mother Theory. What the hell's going on?
Oh, yeah, right? I mean, come on. Yeah. But
that might be the dad episode, the theoretically
dad with
episode.
Dad, right, with Alexander Kirk and the whisper and what did he whisper and all of that. And then also just hearing, fans, write in of what they believe it could have been. And, those are the blanks, the empty space, the air that is left there to sort of fill in, for the viewer. I mean, I know what he said. It's not, I can tell you this, it's not just bullshit. It's not just like, well, let's just have him say something we don't know what it is. I know what it is, but that's the fun of it.
And again, in season 6, he talks about it yet again.
That's why everybody's having such a hard time with the Ilya episode in 619. It's that you get this whole, like, Ilya comes up with this great plan. They talk about it, but then you don't see who's on the table. You don't see who's in the bank from the face forward side. You see him from the behind. So if you knew who that was, that's game over at that point. I think that's where people are like, well, what can I believe in that episode? Because clearly there was stuff hidden for a reason.
Well, again, this is me being tricky. Maybe. Or maybe it was. Maybe you just didn't see his face, and Ilya is Ilya. Ilya is red. But you're right. I mean, it could be interpreted another way. It's the same thing with, Jon and I were talking about this in an interview. Some of the conversation, we do this often. We've done this back to, I remember in season 2 we did it, and I'm sure we did it before. Oftentimes these conversations, many times with Red, but with other characters, it can be interpreted. It's what's so fun about the show, can be interpreted in different ways, right? It's one conversation. Maybe it's on the surface, it appears to be one thing. Maybe you have a fan theory that influences it, makes it go another direction. But the subtext of the show is what the show is. And the idea that we can have characters having a conversation that can be interpreted in 2 different ways, I love that. And it's super hard to do. But you're pointing it out with the Ilya episode. I mean, maybe it's, as Aaron has said before, maybe what we saw is what we saw, and that is the truth. And it is a simple truth, and it is an answer, and it is concrete. Or the camp that you would take would say, well, I didn't see his face. I didn't see who was on the table, and maybe that was all very purposeful, and maybe you're both right. This is where you guys get on me about saying, he's not going to commit. I'm not going to commit to any of those. I'm not going to squash any of them. And I shouldn't, I think that's what's cool about it. That's what's so fun about listening to the podcast and to reading the comment threads is seeing how it's interpreted, because the interpretation is a big part of it. I do believe that. How people process the show and what they see is super interesting to me.
Yeah, and I think that's the big thing about the Blacklist. Like we've joked all along about lexical ambiguity and take it 2 ways, take it 3 ways. And that's what makes the show fun, is because we had different theory camps from the jump, right? We had Lissington, we had Daddygate, we had imposter theory. And because of that, we were all able to pick apart the things that supported those theories in particular. But those things that supported each other's theory camps also were the things that helped support the other theory camps. But the opposing theory would say, like, but no, if you look at it this way, it could mean this. And it's the fact that we were so stuck in our theory camps that we weren't open to the difference between us today and the Greeks of times long ago was that the Greeks would stand there on the Pantheon and just say, like, hey, I have this philosophy idea. And everybody would be like, that's a great idea, but blah, 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 but blah, 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 but blah, 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 blah. The difference is for us, we were all like, no, you're wrong. You're wrong. Stop. No, you're wrong. And it's like, we never took time to listen to each other. And if we would have all just listened to each other a little bit more, we probably would have figured this out a long time ago and the show would have been over much sooner.
Yeah, speaking of, I mean, let's take a dive down. Some of the times Jon hinted at things and we just completely assumed he was diverting attention. Like here, to open season 4, he hints at a Kaplan backstory, literally hints at it.
That was Tori's question, was before Mr. Kaplan gets quote unquote capped, are we going to see like the backstory we got from Dembe with the Mombasa cartel? Will we get to see a Kaplan backstory or how Red and Kate met?
That's funny. I half jokingly say, although I think it would be fascinating, in this whole spin-off world, I'd love to see the cable version of Mr. Kaplan, the origin story, like what they did with Better Call Saul to Breaking Bad. She's a fascinating character. I think she is complex and has secrets, and I would love to see this. Not the teaser, but the series. That would be a reach, but there's great story there, and it's a good idea, to see that. Yeah, that is definitely a possibility.
Or how he tells us how to view the Ilya scenes and recaps the truths of the past.
The Ilya episode, we know Dom is an unreliable narrator, his words, not what we see on screen. But would you say that everything we actually physically see, occurs in some fashion? That you're not dodging the audience or fooling the audience or pulling the rug out or anything like that?
What I would say about that is that, and I think this holds true for other flashbacks or other stories that we've told within the show that might already be closed, but other open-ended questions. Yes, it is true that Dom could be an unreliable narrator. Yes, it's true he could be protecting Red or his daughter, but I think there's more truth in what he says than fiction. We're not, if what you're suggesting, Aaron, and I've heard you say this before, like, are the things that we saw in that story all fake? No. We're not going to come back and sort of portray that everything he said was like a dream sequence in some bad student film. Like, guess what? None of that really happened. It's not like that. I think there's more truth to it. Is it open to interpretation? Could it be open to the idea that, like you said, that maybe he's an unreliable narrator? Maybe. I mean, but Raymond Reddington's an unreliable narrator, and which he said in the pilot. So I don't know if that really answers that for you, but what it is not is just some big story that everything you saw was fake. Is that story more true than not? Yes. It's again, it's sort of like, I keep going back to this. It's the only one I think of because in 6 years, my mind's gone to mush, but Are You My Father? No. Then we find out Raymond Reddington's her father. It sounds like we've contradicted ourselves. And then we find out that there's a DNA test. We find the bones of Raymond Reddington. And those three things along the way, each of them were true. Sometimes there was a little bit of a contradiction to them, but in hindsight, it's one very clean story. Raymond Reddington's Elizabeth King's father. It's just that James Spader is not playing, is not the original Raymond Reddington. But is it a big fake out? I don't think that's fair to the audience.
Or in season 6, when we ask about seeing the Night of the Fire.
We love going back each season and doing sort of a non-traditional episode. They're some of my favorites, actually, of the series. At some point, I'm sure at some point we will go back. I mean, the truth lies within the Night of the Fire. I'm sure that at some point we're going to have to go back there. I don't know that there's an episode around that. We sort of told an episode around that with the Kaplan episode. That's as close as we got when, we saw Katerina and Masha and there's the fires happening across town on TV. So that's as close as we've gotten. But yeah, that lies, that remains to be unmined territory. The truth to the series lies not only within that Night of the Fire, but also the window, which we've started to color in quite a bit, what happened in the time after, right? Like the time after. One of the stories we told this season was Katerina walked into the water, but what happened after? And she walked out of the water. And so there is room there. There are stories there that have not yet been told that obviously we're being very careful with how what those stories are and how quickly we tell them. But yeah, there are some nuggets there that are yet to be revealed.
And here's Jon stating at the end of season 7 that season 8 was going to be different, and it was. Can you tease season 8?
Season 8, all I would say about season 8 is we do have a direction of where we're going. Not that we haven't in the past, but we have a very clear direction of where we're going in terms of the story that we didn't get to finish telling that is going to be a rocket ship headed into next season, which, is going to be different in many different ways. And I think that's going to be refreshing. It's scary. It's unusual, but it can't always be the exact same. And I think this choice by Liz is going to mix things up in a way that I think are going to be both healthy and fun and disturbing.
And if we're shut down for longer than we think, is it all animated next year?
No, I think all the cast would all love that. Doing all their lines from their bathtubs and their robes, at home in bed. No, I think the fans, we have a great cast. And I think the fans much prefer the real actors to the animation. So I think this is probably a one and done, but has been a blast.
Yes, it was.
Yes, it was. Very, very different.
Or hear how he talks about Anne's death almost like it was a setup for the finale.
Anne is dead. Anne hit her head, and she's gone. So, and I love LaChance. I mean, she was great, but she
was great. She was so
dead.
Good.
Yeah.
You're going to break some hearts with that because there's some real conspiracy theory. There's some real work to make that work for a lot of people.
Well, look, maybe we should lean into that. Maybe I should take that back and can we edit that out? I'm joking. Yeah, no, she's gone. That's part of the tragedy of being. I think that story doesn't work if she's still alive. That is the story of Red wanting to be a normal person. He goes into this woman's life, and the tragedy is he destroys her, and he can't be a normal person. So that I think is part of what that story is.
And I didn't even see that one until I actually listened to this clip. I was just like, oh my gosh, Red came into Anne's life, and because Red came into Anne's life, Anne died. I'm like, well, that's exactly what happened in the finale. Red came into Liz's life, and because Red came into Liz's life, Liz died. Like, oh my gosh, they're giving us the clues the whole time. We just were too daft to see them sometimes. Even us.
Absolutely. In the moment, it sounds like misdirection, but with the puzzle box top revealed, like you always call it, he was pretty honest in all of these, how they panned out. He just, obviously, I think sometimes people don't realize, like when you're doing an interview, I've never understood for the life of me. And I know sometimes you have to do it because we're podcasts and fans want to ask those questions. But whenever you ask something about whatever's coming up, they're never going to tell you. So I've never understood why we even ask those questions. Like, it's just, you ask about things that have happened, or you can tease about what's coming up. But what do you think this character is going to do in the future? Or can you tell us the ending? They're never going to answer that. Every once in a while, they give us, really cool, exciting speculation. Like the one time that Jon Bokenkamp broke the news of a season 4 renewal on our podcast before any outlet had it. So every major outlet ran that story and quoted and cited the Blacklist Exposed. That was a good day. It's one of NBC's most popular shows. Is there an official announcement yet for renewal? Are we still waiting?
No, we're not. We've been renewed for the 4th season.
That's what I thought. Okay. I just want to make sure.
We actually knew about that a while ago. It's one of those things that's hard to keep quiet. But yes, we're renewed through the 4th season. Hopefully we don't tank that out. We got a lot of story to tell. But yeah, we are renewed through the 4th season.
But see, we tried to do it again the following year, and he wasn't going to step in that hole 2 years in a row.
So first question we have to ask, of course, have you been renewed yet for season 5?
Not that I know of, no. So season 4 is more than enough at the moment. So no season 5 yet.
Okay, sounds good.
Get those out of there right up front.
Exactly.
I like that.
And I think the big thing about this is that even though we almost got him fired and maybe blacklisted ourselves, he's always been a great supporter of the podcast. I mean, not only in front of the mic by joining us for the interviews every season, but also behind the scenes. We're invited to the set. We are invited to take part of the DVDs. Aaron won't let the hospital thing down ever. So I think it's just been interesting.
I just want a clinic. That would be fine.
A walk-in.
I just a walk-in clinic. That's all I want.
Just give him a pop-up testing site.
A pop-up testing site. No, I don't need a COVID storyline. I don't want that.
We're just saying, hey, if you need fan commentary for these final 2 episodes, we're available.
Oh man, God, that would be great to do a DVD documentary or commentary or something on the finale. I could do that all day.
That would be fun.
You know what? Let's let's kind of get into this a little bit. For those speculating, this was Jon's decision and not a recent one. We kind of alluded to that. And I think he explained himself very clearly in his own words. He wants to challenge himself. He wants to do other things. And I do not fault him for that. Do you? I mean, I know there's some people that have said that how could he leave right now and da-da-da-da, and the show's coming back. Creative people want to be creative. It isn't always, fiscally motivated for everybody.
I think the big thing for him is that he just wanted to understand that there are things that people want to do in life. And sometimes when you're the creative, Megan's a great example, right? Mojan's a great example. People just get to a point where they're like, I got some opportunities that I've been saying no to. At some point you have to say yes to some opportunities.
Or pursue other ones.
Exactly. And I think that's totally fine. I think that that's something that we're able to do as humans. And it's not because we feel like, oh my gosh, it's how could he walk away from his baby? I mean, this is his lifeblood, his bread and butter. I mean, we say that with sports people all the time. Like, oh, how could this great quarterback of all time, and I'm a Packer fan, so I got 3 of them when you count Bart Starr.
Maybe 3 of them.
Yeah. Like, how could they walk away from the team? And oh my, it's a business at the end of the day. Everybody has livelihoods. Everybody has things that they need to do. They don't owe us anything, right? We're fans of a show. We watch the show begins and the show ends. And when the show ends, maybe we remember it, maybe we don't. But at the end of the day, life goes on. And that's what has to happen with these people too. They are human beings after all, doing a job.
And I do feel, especially if you go back and you reflect on interviews he gave with other outlets before the finale came up. And, I know if people haven't seen him talking about anything since then, I would make the assumption he's probably letting the show speak for himself. Which
is also normal, right? Damon and Carlton did the exact same thing when Lost ended. They didn't answer anything. They didn't go on any interviews, no post-show talk shows. They weren't on Kimmel afterwards. No, they disappeared.
Wish they would have, because I had some things to ask them. All right. But in terms of Jon, I really feel like, if you watch those interviews or you read them, he very much says many times, this is the end of a story. Like, this is the end of a story. And I feel like it's pretty obvious at this point that it's the end of his story. Like, he's not going to be part of the story anymore. So he was writing to his end of his story. What they do next, the character's still going to be there. Red's still going to be there. They're probably going to do some different things. I don't even know if some of the mythology that we've talked about over the years will even be a factor anymore because you don't have Liz. So do you need to, or do you just do other kinds of mythology? Do you do other, big bads and things like that? I don't think it's going to be as important to the show going forward as it has been up till now. And I really feel like this is kind of concluded. Like, he told the story he wanted to tell as much as he could with the show still going, is the appearance to me.
And the task force doesn't know, right? Cooper doesn't know. Aram doesn't know. Wrestler doesn't know. There are people that still don't know the identity within the universe. And therefore you can do stories that can still dig into who is Red. Even though we, the audience, know, those stories might be even more interesting because we know and we'd be like, God, how can these criminals be so stupid?
Could be. And, and Megan's going off to do other things. Might open it up for other stories for Aram and Park and Wrestler and Cooper. You never know. There's Dembe. Maybe we'll get Dembe in the mix a little bit more than he has been, so you never know how these things are going to play out. And in terms of the podcast, Jon has always been a supporter of our podcast and us as people. He's been very supportive of us as people, not only in front of the mic by joining us for interviews every season since 3, but also behind the scenes. He's been a very vocal supporter of this podcast for years. And honestly, it's been an honor to know him, and not just because he runs a show. I just like him as a person.
Yeah. And here's a few clips of him doting on us, I guess, over the years of the show as well.
And I think we try to be fair about that, but that's
please,
funny.
But that's the fun of what you guys do, is that television is a very interactive process. Whereas a movie, you're sitting with a bunch of people. I feel like TV, it happens so fast, and there's, I don't know if they're called chat rooms, I don't know what they are anymore, but there's like blogs and comment sections and articles and what you guys are doing. And so it's much more immediate, I feel like. And I love hearing that. I love hearing how things are. For every time there's like, well, was that a filler episode? Or I didn't like that character. I didn't expect that turn. There's also, it's so fun to hear people talk about and guess what's happening and what is the connection here or what's going to happen there. You're like seeing people try to fill in the blanks. That's clearly more fun, but it's great to sort of interact in a weird social media sort of way. I love that you guys are supporting the show and talking about the show and speaking about it so articulately. And I'm like, wow. And then I saw that you connected with Dan and I'm like, how cool. I'd love to chat with you. So quite honestly, whatever I can do to, what's good for you guys is good for me and hopefully vice versa. And I'm just happy to, talk about the show or writing in general or TV or movies or any of that stuff. And to the extent that I can be interesting, I'm happy to chat.
Guys, thank you for doing this and having me back.
Thanks for coming.
Again, it's really fun to listen to you guys deconstruct the show and have fisticuffs over it. The show's great, you guys. I was listening the other day. In fact, I'm midway through the most recent one, that you guys did on both shows. It's so interesting to hear. I don't know if you've gone back. I haven't, but back to the very early episodes even that you did of the podcast. You guys have got such a great rapport, and it moves and it flows, and it's super articulate, and it's very good. I've become like a listener, trying to stay distanced, but it's always very interesting to listen to. So.
Which one's been your favorite podcast episode? I'm just curious if you have like one that stands out in your mind.
Like he was writing them down.
The one I listen to every night before I go to bed. No, a favorite one. I don't know that there's a favorite one so much as just the banter, the sort of sometimes frustrated banter between you two has grown in ways that it wasn't there before that I find sort of delicious. You know what I mean? I
want to cut him.
Yeah, you can. I love it. That it's more the timbre of things that's shifted, and it's just interesting. It's really cool to listen to.
Because we're always Monday morning podcasting about your show, and I'm kind of curious as you listen. Has there been anything where you might have audibly screamed at the radio, just like you idiots? That's not right. You dum-dums.
No, I love it. I think that's what I think is so fascinating. It's interesting to hear the sort of the viewership respond. And look, there's nobody who I think is more in tune with what the show is and where it's moving and how kind of what it is in its DNA. You guys are very, very astute watchers in that way, and know the show inside and out, and your listeners do as well. The questions, that are asked are people are paying very close attention. So it is really interesting to hear. They're really, look, here's the thing. I feel like in terms of criticism, between getting the show off the ground and the feature work I've done, I have probably sounds like bullshit, but I have pretty thick skin, and I am more than happy to have holes poked in stories or things that don't work. And, that's part of what we do. We sit in the room all day sort of poking holes in each other's stories going, well, does this work? Does that work? How does that track? Like 2017, I go, oh my God, that feels like it's open-ended. And I thought we resolved it. Those sort of things haunt me, but no. Have I screamed at the, at my phone when I'm walking around the lot listening to the podcast? Not at all. No. In fact, I actually respect the the ability to disagree or go, okay, I don't like that character, I don't like that storyline, can't move on fast enough from this or that. By all means, that makes me. I feel like you guys are being candid and raw with the show as you can be, which is good.
Kind of hoping you'd slam Troy there, but that's fine.
You're looking for a dig on Troy's mom theory, right?
Yeah, anything. I'll take anything, really.
Okay.
Anything to bring that head down.
I might have yelled at him once or twice, but no, I haven't.
He still hasn't publicly denied it, though, so it's still technically plausible.
I haven't denied really any theories, though. I don't think.
That's true.
You have not.
That's true. So. Basically, Red could Red be an otter?
Yes. We've had, is Liz a robot? Is Tom Red's son? It's been all over the map.
I'm okay if you say the show is about a mother caring for her child. That's fine.
I know, but then Aaron wouldn't be okay, and you two would have a big fight about it, and I don't know what would happen. What would you guys have to argue about then? It would be no fun to listen. I get so much joy out of this. I would love it, and I just got to give a brief shout-out to the fans. We wouldn't be doing this. We often talk about Schaumburg because you're in Schaumburg. We in the room go, oh man, what would the folks in Schaumburg think? What would the podcast fans think? I'm telling you, man, we've got the best fans in TV. I love the theories, and I love that they can look at the show in such a granular way, and that's largely possible because of the focus that you guys give it. So thanks for talking about the show each week, and thanks to the fans for digging what we're doing.
I like when we humble brag, we have somebody else do it for us. I like that. We should do that more often.
For sure.
Okay, man. We're coming to the end, as they say. So why don't we talk a little bit about Jon as a person as we've come to know him? Because I feel like, I'm not, like I said, I won't do inside baseball or anything like that. But I think it's important to tell people the kind of person he is, because we have talked to him a lot. We spent time with him. We've had dinners with him. He's a great guy, legitimately a great guy who has a passion for stories, who has a passion for telling his mythology the way that he sees fit, and he has a passion for his creative team. He loves his writers. He speaks so highly of everybody that works on the show. He speaks so highly of all the people in production. I mean, I think he loves everybody from top to bottom. He seems like a very active creator, showrunner. And, it's been, as a person, it's also been very impressive to see him in regards to his real life, not just this artistic one. Like I said, because of the Hollywood Outsider, I've interviewed a lot of people, and I've talked to a lot of actors and directors and people in entertainment. And a lot of times when you're talking to them, and I'm not trying to be negative, because I do understand, like they are their own brand in many ways, like they're their own product. So they have to say things a certain way and kind of carry the torch forward and always stay on message and on point and all that other stuff. Jon is always genuine. There's definitely times where I know he can't say anything because it's the show, and I got to protect the show, and I got to protect the storyline, and I can't say anything about this or that. But in terms of as a person, he is so un-Hollywood. I wonder sometimes if he's actually ever stepped foot in Hollywood. He's so grounded. He still remains, he keeps his family in the Midwest, the heart of the Midwest. We've met his wife and his kids, all of them wonderful people. His wife is absolutely charming, wonderful woman. And she's been nothing but supportive of Jon's pursuits and everything else, as well as his kids. Kids are great. I mean, we met them when they were little, and now one's going to college. I mean, it's crazy how time flies, and they seem like genuinely kind, good, decent people. And that isn't always said about the Hollywood
elite,
the Hollywood elites. I don't even like to use that term, because I don't think Jon's an elite. I think he's very approachable. We saw him when we went to C2E2, how he directly interacts with fans. He's just very down to earth, and he just treats everybody like he would treat anybody else. He's just very kind in that way, and I just can't say that word enough, genuine. And on a personal note, he has been extremely supportive. He's been an inspiration in a way. I've been a writer most of my life, and most of my writing has been either critical reviews or short stories. I even did a podcast for a while, Smirk, cheap plug. It's no longer going. I wrote a story every week, and we kind of talked about the content, and he inspired me to get more involved, because I kind of gave up on my hopes of even making a movie or writing a movie, because at my age, I'm like, it's never going to happen anyway, so why bother? But I remember many years ago, he's not going to remember this, he probably talks to 1,000 people, but I remember having a conversation with him about his writing process and how writing screenplays is very complicated. I've never written that way, so it was very hard for me to understand how to do it. And he relayed to me, he's like, I struggled getting my screenplay sold. I was a struggling writer. I think he was pretty close to calling it quits at one point, right? If I remember right.
Yeah, he was going to pack up and move back to Nebraska.
Yeah, and then Blacklist hit, and and he wasn't spry. He wasn't 25. He wasn't. He was tenured by that point. He was tenured, and went on to great monumental success. And the message I took from that conversation and just from watching how he pursues things is that means that there's always still a chance. If you quit, there's not a chance. But if you keep going, you have an opportunity. You have a chance to move forward and actually achieve the dreams that you have. And it's always helpful and it's always beneficial. Writers are very temperamental beasts and definitely have, I don't know, temperament issues sometimes. And you just kind of get to the point where you're like, I just don't want to do this anymore. Like, it's just not working. It's obviously not going to be a thing for me. So I should do something else and stop doing this. But it is very cathartic for me and I want to do it. And it really got me to commit to finishing a screenplay and, pursuing that goal again, which I had just stopped. I just gave up on it. Yeah, because a big portion of that was it was so hard for me to write a screenplay because it's a completely different kind of storytelling. And I had a hard time kind of getting my brain wrapped around it. And I think I have it now. And a lot of that has to do with talking to Jon about it. And like I said, he probably doesn't even remember the conversation. But that was very impactful for me. And just making me believe that, you can have power in Hollywood. You can have a power of sorts in business and still be a wonderful person. Just be a genuine guy who's willing to talk to you and have an honest conversation and won't hold it against you if you have a critical point of view. And he's never done that. And I've probably been far more critical than Troy on the show. It's part of being a critic, I think, in nature. And he's never once been anything but understanding and respectful of that. Some people take it very personal. Some people get very defensive. I've never witnessed that. I've never seen that. I've always seen him take it with a grain of salt and go, okay. And actually a lot of times absorb feedback from fans, from whoever, just absorb critical feedback. Like, okay, I'll look at that. That's an interesting way to look at that. And to me, that says someone who's open. He's open-minded. He's willing to take some chances, to listen to feedback, to grow himself as a writer, and to expand his horizons. And I think that makes him just a wonderful, wonderful guy. And I will tell you on a personal note, very personal note, my daughter is part of the LGBTQ community. And we've had conversations about this whole is red cat thing for some time. And it was even when I didn't know if it was true or not, even when I didn't believe it was true or not, it always created a conversation between me and my daughter that I don't know that we would have had otherwise. And I'm not an avid fan in that respect. Like, I don't think TV is real. I don't think fictional characters are real. I just don't get like that. But it created a conversation piece where I would bring it up to my daughter and we would have honest conversations about gender identity issues, sexuality, the trans community, just things like that. And it was really beneficial to us. So I'm appreciative of that as well, because it created a dialogue. I don't know if we would have had that kind of an open dialogue without the show in some respects. I know that sounds weird, but it's honest. Sometimes TV and entertainment creates a conversation piece or opens a door to have a conversation about something you weren't comfortable about having a conversation with or didn't have enough knowledge about to have a conversation about. And I think he's kind of delivered that. But we're still obviously we're going to keep in touch with him, I think. But in terms of the show, I'm going to miss him on it. I'm going to miss having his interviews. I'm going to miss having him to tell me I am maybe wrong.
I like it when he asks you questions. Like, so Aaron, tell me, like, what did you feel about Liz this season? Hey, Aaron, why do you hate Tom so much? Hey, Aaron, why don't you shut the fuck? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Sometimes I think that's what he wants to say, but and he can. I don't take things personal either. So I respect that.
No, that's all well said. Like, I don't know if I have much to add to that. I mean, for me, it was always just great to know that. I remember the first time that we had an opportunity break, and I was at this work function. I was in the middle of nowhere, in a building. Like, I didn't know if the cell reception was even going to hold. and ABC had called me out of the blue, and it's one of those like unknown numbers, and you never pick up the unknown number, right? Never. And I'll find out what the heck. I'll pick up this call. I picked up the call.
No, it's a car warranty. That's why.
Yeah, and it was ABC, the press department, and they were like, "Hey, we know you're doing this show on Resurrection. We heard from Kevin Sizemore, who came to see us at Paramount, and he's like, Kevin said we should talk to you guys. Do you guys want to interview the creator of the show?" And I was like, "Yeah, that'd be great." And so just having that opportunity and going through what we did on that show previous to doing the Blacklist, it gave you that experience and it gave you that ability to then be in a position where you could actually look at a show both logically, objectively, critically, and to be doing the job that you need to do to be able to have some random creator out in the ether, some lonely, I forget what the hell night the show was on at that point, Thursdays potentially. And all of a sudden, like, I'm getting messages on my phone just blowing up going like, "Dude, did you see Jon Bokenkamp tweeted you?" And I was like, "What? What are you talking about? Like, you're crazy." Because we were so engaged with the fans at the time. We're just tweeting along, doing our own thing. Like, I totally missed the tweet. And then sure enough, I went back and I was like, there it was. It's like, "Hey, you had Dan Knopf on your show. Where was my invite?" And I was like,
"Yeah, I remember you missed that one. I told you that, right?"
Yeah.
And you're like, I didn't even see it.
I didn't even see it.
Idiot.
And I was just like, "Oh, like, holy crap."
Dumb. Sorry.
No,
Dumb.
Totally fine. And I was like, "Holy crap. Did he just invite himself onto our show?" And I was like, "Wow, that's so cool." And so we reached out and we were able to, make the interview happen, BLE 39. Still one of the most downloaded episodes to this day. Thanks to our gaff and John's gaff of releasing the season 4 renewal notice ahead of time. And it was just like, and then from that point forward, it was like, oh, like that could have gone one of two ways. It could have been like, "You guys are assholes. Like, you ruined my career, blah, blah, blah." No, you talk about the genuine comment that Aaron keeps making. Like, we just emailed John and we're like, "Dude, we are so sorry. We thought that was like in the news and it was out there and da 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 da." And he's like, No, it was my bad. Don't worry about it. No news. What is it? All news is good news. Just spell my name right. Good for your show. Good for our show. Looking forward to do it again." And I was just like,
but we totally didn't think he'd ever come back.
We totally thought we were blacklisted. And like this huge sigh of relief, like just, and then when he comes back, literally, 12 episodes later at the end of season 3, beginning of season 4, it was like, you're like, oh, like he genuinely came back. Like, this is totally awesome. And then just being able to, connect up with them for the DVD specials in person, anytime I was out in LA quite a bit, for my work, at work conferences. And every time I was there, I was like, "Hey, are you in town? Let's have lunch." And we had lunch together. It was just good that he took the time. And I think that's the big thing. Like, most people in Hollywood would never take the time. He took the time. And I think that was a testament to his character, his upbringing, how he's raising his family today. Again, like Aaron said, great people, got to spend a lot of time, with the kiddos, one day, getting to meet them and understand what they're thinking of doing in the future. And I thought that was a great conversation. And just the support, his wife has had for not only John, but also for us. Kathy's interacted with us directly. I mean, it was just, it was
very much
fantastic to meet her. And it's just, yeah, I mean, it's going to be hard to not have him on the show going forward. But it's an amazing 8-year journey. It's an amazing show. And I will tell you that when I saw the montage for the very first time, like literally the credits didn't even roll yet. And I had picked up the phone and called him. And I said, "Dude," I was like I had to call you. And he's like, "Why?" And he's like, I just saw it. And it was the most beautiful thing I ever saw. And he's like, "Oh man, that's great. Thanks a lot for saying that. Thanks for calling." And I literally said, it's like, and I cannot believe I'm going to say this out loud. And if you ever run into John, you can ask him, but he'll tell you. I told him, I was like, "I think the ending was even better than Lost." Words actually came out of my mouth because it was everything that I wanted in that montage for 8 years. And he delivered it, and it was great, and it was beautiful, and it was tragic. And it was just like, man, like, you pulled it off. Kudos to you, sir. That's amazing. And I'm glad we got to be a part of it. And it was because John made it all happen for us by getting us access, getting us screeners, getting us, behind the scenes, getting us music tracks. I mean, just all the people on the show that we've, become friends with over the years. It wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for John. So thanks for making this pet project, something bigger than it ever was supposed to be.
You sound a little emotional. Do you want a hug?
No, I'm good.
Well, that just sounded mean. Okay. Well, I think it's time for us to head out. We've definitely taken enough of your time. We've played a lot of clips. We've got one little clip left, and then we're gonna head out of here. But once again, just want to say thank you, Jon, for everything you've done for the show and for us over the years. You are a friend. You know, even though we're talking about a lot of stuff where you've helped us out in terms of the show and the podcast, you've also been a friend. So thank you so much for being a friend and a sounding board and just being you. Just being you. I wish him all the success and best wishes I could possibly wish anyone in this business. Entertainment is a tough business. I hope he just keeps knocking things out of the park, and I can't wait to see what he does next.
With that, I think we'll say Das Svidaniya, and thanks for everything, Jon.
Okay, I think that covers it all, except for one little thing. I think Jon should say goodbye.
Jon, as always, thanks so much for being here. It's always a blessing to have you come by and just be so candid and open, and at least, definitively put something in the ground for a change.
Well, look, don't go too far with that, Troy. Nothing is definitive, but no, come on. I look, you guys have been awesome. I really love listening to the show. It is so interesting to hear everyone's sort of theories and how close to the bone they get. Some of them that are completely whacked out, but some of them that are really kind of, I'm like, we're getting a little close there. So that's always really, it's fun to hear. And I appreciate your guys' insight and sort of detail with which you watch. It's super, super cool to see. Thanks for having me.